So when you go to war because the nation tells you to, not the political party,
right?
Not a belief system, not because they're bad. You do it because you're supposed to. You support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it's written like that, so you don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
You don't have a moral dilemma about doing what you're told. When you go and you fight for the guy on your right and left, now all of a sudden guys start talking politics all the time.
Yeah.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
What's the purpose? So when one of their friends dies or is hurt, that was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. Well, war is hell.
Right.
The enemy gets a vote.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today I have a guest that many of you know, Mr. Tony Mayne. He spent a career in the military, a lot of it in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Transitioned over to the dark side as an officer, a part of his career. So we'll discuss that a little bit. But I say that as in fun. It's a great career choice for guys that are looking into it. I know people are always looking for information for it. But I think what may be most significant about you, Tony, is what you're doing now in your post-military life, helping service members transition into purposeful and meaningful lives after service, which can be difficult. I'm living it right now. You've lived through it. I won't monopolize the time. I'll hand it over to you and let you introduce yourself, and we'll get right into it.
Well, first, Yuma, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Not saying that as a throwaway, but what you were doing and what you did to end your career in the Ranger Regiment is difficult. I would say you already went through a transition.
Right.
I mean, absolute gunfighter to an absolute soft skill, right? Very difficult, yes. and learning all those nuances, but you're applying those skills to what you're doing now. Right. So that's pretty awesome. I'm a fortunate man. Like, I am a conglomeration of a bunch of good people. And I was very lucky early in my life to realize that there's a lot of people out there that wanted to help me, that found value in community. And so I grew up in a cinder block house in Marietta, Ohio. Lower income family, and ended up eventually matriculating to Ohio State, enlisting in 99. So pre 9/11, Clinton era administration, a time where when you would go get supplies at Ranger Regiment, if you would get 25 feet of 550 cord and 25 feet only,
yep.
You would get your 100 per hour tape rolled on a pencil.
Yes.
For seal up all your tie downs, all those other type of things. Now you just get thrown a roll that overpriced contracted tape. And so I was blessed. I served for 4 years, made staff sergeant, which I say made staff. That was a big marker. I always looked up to squad leaders.
Right.
Made that before I departed in 2003. Went to Clemson for a grad degree. So the Army provided that. At that time, OCS at Fort Benning was, in my mind, horrible. Hot as bejeebus, wearing an ascot, banging a drum, and I was not about to be caught by my Ranger brothers wearing an ascot.
No,
but I did go to the dark side, Clemson University, 2 years, met my wife, blessed. And then it took, from the time I left, about 10 years after a stint in Germany, a couple of commands at Fort Bragg to come back to Ranger Regiment. And that's really where I think I might have helped applying some of the things that I saw by leaving when I came back, but was med boarded, thought I was getting out, and started my first transition while on active duty, stayed in, became a public affairs officer of all things, and had a great rest of my career and really enjoyed it, which led me to learn about nonprofits, and then actually eventually working for one with Gallant Few and working alongside a lot of great people with Three Rangers Foundation as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a phenomenal career. And if I remember correctly, you had completed your undergraduate studies prior to joining the military, enlisted. Is that right? I
did. And so that is not what we see now, right? So 1999, when I arrived at Charlie Company, 3rd Ranger Battalion, my nickname was CID. So that's Criminal Investigation Detachment, with the idea of why would a college kid come here except to spy on us? So very, very different culture, right? We had the Ranger Indoctrination Program, 17 days of physical hazing, not physical hazing like a fraternity, but physical hazing how far can we push you legally
Yes.
to see if you would quit. So
Most of the time.
Yeah, so tough. So you want to ensure that Regiment was extremely tough. So you have a ton of machismo, right? So you could see the decisions made over time, and the advancement of the organization was based on kind of physical fitness, which is great, but between shoot, move, communicate, physical fitness, there's a lot of other dimensions out there that could be kind of applied. Now, we were just at 175, 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah for their Ranger for Life seminars, something that you've helped develop through that phalanx office at Regiment. And almost all the kids have some college, or they know how to get their college credits. And then they were so responsive to some of the briefings that Rangers of yesteryear would have just been, I don't have time to listen to this.
Yeah.
The chaplain did a great job going over like the cognitive way in which they process decisions, and the guys were listening. Like I was looking at their eyes to see. It's just a different group of people now. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is a different group of people. We saw the GWAT, or the Global War on Terrorism, really transform the regiment from that hard-nosed, just if you could do hard things, we could make you take care of the rest, to where we had to come way more technical based. Over the years, we have infantry guys now doing what our commo guys only used to do back, in the 90s and 2000s, pre-GWAT stuff. And I think we're kind of in a transition, right? As a military coming out of the GWAT, that's a lot of Rangers that I knew, or service members in general, that joined in the hopes to go overseas and serve the country. And now that's not there as much. And you joined in the same manner. There wasn't a war going on. You joined the Army. So what brought you into the Army the way without the war, where a lot of people are going to be in that same kind of thought process now in the world, hopefully, if Russia stays on their side of the border?
We shall see. Yeah. So it's funny. One of the Army values is selfless service, right? Selfless. So the idea that you're serving for something greater than yourself, serving for your buddies, serving for the nation. I would argue at the time that you signed an enlistment contract, or even especially for officers when they raise their hand at oath commissioning, I would say that it is for selfishness.
Yeah.
The military provides an identity, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's also pretty good milestones in terms of things that you're going to do and accomplish. So I always looked at the military as a way to prove myself as a man. It has to do with my background. Not only was I born in a cinder block house, but within 2 years, our birth mother had left us. And that is why, to this day, that term blood is thicker than water does not apply. My friends are as close as family. Family or friends, those are interchangeable words. It's love that kind of ties and is the most important piece of that process to me, for sure. And that's why I could go down to 1st Ranger Battalion last week. And I know, off a tangent, it's hard not to.
I know, yeah.
And just to see those kids and to know that we were there.
Yeah, I know.
And they joined, and they are now thinking about getting out.
Yeah.
Because they can't go to the show anymore.
Yep.
They've completed what they wanted to do, Ranger School generally, the team leaders. And it was that selfishness. But now we try to reprogram and learn. And they hopefully learned through service that it is about small teams and other people.
Right.
That when they go out in the real world, don't do it by yourself.
Right. Absolutely.
Have your tribe, have your transition team. And the most fun thing, though, is you come from this organization, you can go down there, you can talk to Rangers, and you just tell them they're right or wrong. Uh-huh. And they're very responsive to that. That is not the same. That does not work in the civilian world. But when you say, like, hey, if you don't have a financial planner or someone you talk about finances and you're 24 years old, you're just wrong. You are failing. You're failing as a human being. I had that discussion with the guys, and they're like, "Oh, okay, tell me more. Who should I talk to?" Like, very responsive. So that is, like I said, very long. One of the biggest differences now between enlisting back then and now, and the guys are heady. I think they get some of those concepts that we just gutted through. Yeah,
and I know you probably counseled quite a few guys over the past couple of years, and I know I have, that are thinking about getting out of the Army because they're just unsure. They're, like you said, the show's not happening anymore. So, or they're asking more questions about what else can they do in the military. And you went green to gold. And I talked to, that's something a lot of guys just didn't know about for the last few years. They knew about it, but they didn't really dig into it because they would rather stay in the regiment and go keep deploying it on cycle. So there's more conversations about that when I left the organization. What was your experience going green to gold? What was that like?
So I made the decision based on some assumptions. And we know that in the military, you turn assumptions into facts. So most of the enlisted listening would be like, oh, go figure, an officer who made some assumptions and thought they were right. So I read the New Testament on my second deployment on Bagram Airfield before the location first off was really built up to this almost college complex that the folks have had for the past decade plus. And during that time, and I'm also a history major from undergrad, CID has a history major. So I think I'm tying things together. I'm like, the Middle East is a dumpster fire.
Right.
The Middle East, in my opinion, based on what I read, being a Christian, remains a dumpster fire. There's a parable of planting seeds in the Bible, and that's really means where you spend your time, your money, your gifts. And you spend it in fertile soil. Now, I'm not saying because that's generally a barren desert wasteland, but you spend your time with fertile soil. So I never thought through, Tony Mayne's own policy department that we would spend so much time in the Middle East.
Right.
So the reason that I went green to gold is because at that time I've already done 4 Kilo 22s, our big combined company arms live fire. And I was like, man, I got this for another 4 years. I made staff sergeant in 4 years,
right.
Back then. And I'm like, man, now I've got to do the waiting game of time. So that when you asked about the opportunities and the current day Rangers, I think what we're fighting is, you're good, the markers, but the military still has that waiting game.
Yes. So
I like the military. I only joined just for myself for 3 years, but I did end up staying. So then when I looked at it, I was like, well, what's the next leadership position that I want? Combat related, platoon sergeant.
Right.
And I've got to wait 3 to 4 years because, right, so I got impatient, thought I knew too much. So green to gold provided an opportunity for it. Now I start looking at the military as a career. That didn't have anything to do with money. I don't trust any officer who decides to stay in the military because of money.
Any person.
Well, here's the thing. If you stay in the military because of money or switch from enlisted to officer, like your analysis is like so skewed. Why wouldn't you, if it's about money, wouldn't you get out and do something else? Like we don't make close to our earning potential,
right?
But that's not why we serve in the first place. So I made some of my assumptions to go to Clemson's off of a little bit of a false assumptions, right? Like it would have been hard pressed, I think, to look back at my life.
Yeah.
When I was a squad leader, and we jumped into, I got to participate in the Rhino jump in Afghanistan, blessed. I got to participate in another jump into Iraq. The other squad leaders around me and team leaders who grew up over time in regiment, 2 were regimental sergeant majors. The other 2 had 2 company first sergeant time period. And then there's like this Tony Mayne guy.
Yeah, right.
All right. So I was just around excellent people. That ate away for me for a long time when I misread this situation. And the first time my squad leader and my old team leader came to Clemson to visit, spent some time on the lake, had a great time, and they're telling me about Fallujah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I've had this for a long time. You talk about leading with vulnerability. I brought this up to Mike Hall for the first time, and Marcus Hull from through Rangers Foundation for the first time yesterday morning. I have always felt like I wasn't worth Ranger Regiment. I left before it got hard, at least in my mind. People will look and see the jump stars like, oh, you're awesome. Like, no, like 2 of my guys are like RSMs. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And then, it takes me 10 years to get back. By the time I get back, I'm on the regimental staff and I'm helping people deploy.
Right.
Yay, me.
Right. Yeah.
It goes back to the selfishness of service. Sometimes you want to be there with the guys. But at Clemson was awesome. That's where I really saw the power of a scroll and a tab.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the kids have no difference between the other, just like the regular Army has a hard time seeing. But the influence, the immediate credibility, like you're a god until you open your mouth.
Right.
And then you either confirm that you are or you're not. Right.
Yes.
But, in a school that commissioned 24 my senior year, 3 of which were females. At that time, 3 females couldn't go into combat arms.
Right.
We had over 8 individuals, only 12 on active duty, I think, out of the 24. 8 individuals ended up going to Ranger School. 4 ended up serving in Ranger Regiment.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that was luck.
Right.
I think God puts you in places to show some influence, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for anybody who's out there that's getting out of service, just explore your options. I used to say, hey, you're running to the exit door and you need to walk to it. And you're running out the door, you need to open it slowly and look in the hallway first, just like you would in a combat situation. Quit running and slow down a little bit. Slow, smooth and fast. It applies to your transition as well. And just look at those options. Look at green to gold. Look what the opportunities you can do. Look at staying in. Look and talk to guys like Tony Mayne and other organizations out there. And just set yourself up for success is the most important thing. And quit rushing. And I'll ask you a 2-part question.
All right. There you go.
Because I don't know how I missed it. I want to know your definition of vulnerability. And I think it'll tie in well to you spent a majority of your time in the GWAT. Mm-hmm. How did that shape you as a leader, person, husband, father, everything you are now?
All right. So first, vulnerability. How do I define it? I try to relate everything back, and this goes to my faith. Right? I try to the best thing that we can do is to be Christ-like. The way that we become Christ-like is to show love. So what is the definition of vulnerability? Showing others love, not expecting it in return.
Right.
And not having those feelings of, maybe an understanding that you have the feelings of self-doubt,
right,
worth associated with that. But that word love, overused, not well understood. I think whenever you ask a difficult question, if that's not part of someone's answer, me personally, I would start doing almost a flow chart in my head as to the why.
Right.
Right. If somebody wants to transition, they're married and their wife never comes into the conversation. I mean, that should be first.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? I just personal opinion. That's what I think. So that was a piece of it. And because now I am being compensated for the VA for memory loss, give me the number 2 question again.
Exactly.
That one.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Thank you to the American taxpayers, by the way, for that. Much appreciated.
Oh, that's great. The GWAT,
yes,
and its effect on you as a person, husband, father, leader, everything you've done.
All right. So one, I will tell you, reading the New Testament when you are 24 and already think you have everything figured out, and understanding that I read that book, and when I finished it, I thought I told you how that affected my desire to stay in it. But then also, I realized that no one can understand that.
Yeah.
You cannot understand that by reading it.
That's a true statement.
You can.
Yeah.
You have no context, right? My grandfather would say the word Japs. Can you say that now? Should you say that now?
Right.
Because culturally, over time. But when a World War II veteran says it, and he is talking about people who were the enemy, maybe he did mean it as a racial slur.
Right.
Maybe he did not, but you wouldn't know unless you knew the individual.
Right.
Right. So when I look at what the GWAT did over as a person, having the ability to read the New Testament, knowing that I needed to explore life a little bit more than dealing with loss.
Yeah.
That whole idea, the only thing certain in life are taxes and death, or death and taxes.
Yeah.
That's accurate. Mm-hmm. That's accurate for all of us. You don't have to believe in anything to believe in that.
That's true.
So then it was, okay, what did the GWAT do for me? Well, what is life about? It's about other people.
Yeah.
It's about how you can influence other people, no matter what you believe. And I would argue, if you don't believe that, that's where the isolation and emptiness comes from. During the GWAT, over and over, and it's been in movies and books, I would hear leaders talk like this, and I will tell you, it leads to a dumpster fire. We go to war. When you're at war, you take care of your man on your right and left.
Yes.
Or soldier on your right and left, Marine, sailor, airman. You pick it. Space Force now. What do you call a Space Force person, by the way? Have we determined that? Space Cadet? You can't do that.
I was going to say Space Cadet.
I don't think that'll work. All right, so here's the problem with that thought process. Personal opinion. I joined, like selfishness, read a lot of books, history guy, wanted to be a patriot. I just thought that's something I wanted to do.
Right.
I wanted to do it for myself. Like I said, selfish nature, but like there was something to that. So when you go to war because the nation tells you to, not the political party,
right?
Not a belief system, not because they're bad. You do it because you're supposed to. You support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it's written like that, so you don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
You don't have a moral dilemma about doing what you're told. When you go and you fight for the guy on your right and left, now all of a sudden guys start talking politics all the time.
Yeah.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
What's the purpose? So when one of their friends dies or is hurt, that was my responsibility. Mm-hmm. Well, war is hell.
Right.
The enemy gets a vote. And I can't think of a war that we fought outside of the Revolution, Civil War, Spanish American, all the little things as our country was founded and developed, where like this modern army, we fight in somebody else's country.
Right.
I grew up studying of all the history. I love Civil War history, and I was fascinated over and over again, fascinated why someone in the South would fight. Because I'm a Midwesterner. Right. Really come from a Yankee New England family. Right. Slavery's like really bad. Like I say states' rights, can't justify it. I don't listen to it. Sorry. Like that's one of my hard lines. Like you can tell me how it all related and economy and everything. You just can't with me. Like that's kind of like a little bit of a hard line. So I was fascinated with the South. Now what happens when you're now a young man leading people and you're in Afghanistan and you realize, why some of those people are fighting? Because you're there. Right. Mm-hmm. Trying to impose some will or some thought process. Yeah. And that might just be enough. And we look at the legacy of some of the things from the Civil War in our country, and now we were on a stage where the whole world saw it. Right. I found that to be pretty. So what did I learn overall is that to kind of form that up, man, keep an open mind. Yeah. When I do have strong right and left limits about slavery. I feel good about that. Like I can, I can, I think feel good about that. But overall, man, you got to know the miles somebody's walked in their shoes. Yeah. And when your life is about helping and serving others, and you hope that a good day is to influence so somebody else is successful, you'll look at your problems different. Yeah. You'll look at everything different. And I think you've spoke about you. I know you have. I've been listening to you about your faith, your role of faith in your whole life. It bleeds out of you, which is great. The regiment can be a rough and tough place, right? I've talked to about the chaplain with all the chaplains and leading it. And, personally for me, I know I've had my own divergences from faith with some of the stuff I've seen done. What was it like? Of a man of faith like you, it can be challenging for somebody to carry their faith heavily, openly in a Ranger platoon, especially when you're new. I'd just be curious about your whole experience with your faith in the military and how you're so open about it. Well, one, it started, in terms of me really exploring, it started in college. And trust me, like, I burned it up in college. I had a good time. I had a great time in college. In fact, just last month, I told my mom about the one semester that I took all withdrawals. So you stop, or incompletes. It's whatever where you lose all your money because you get a grade. I think it's an incomplete. Yeah. So it's like you should just get Fs, but they decide not to do that because they feel bad for you, but it stays on your permanent record because I ended up having a good time instead. And I'll tell you, it's hard for me to think that I wouldn't do that again, given the opportunity. But I was in a college fraternity, and I wanted to be better with my faith, but people came to me. Right. Same thing happened in Ranger Regiment. There's something different. Now, for the listeners, let's not think, hey, Yuma didn't bring me on. This isn't about like some Christian talk that we're trying to get. What we're talking about is a purpose and an understanding for your life. Right. Right. Like, so this is what I started off with at 175. And like I said, I know to look in Ranger's eyes. right? And I know if there's variance and if their intent. So I told him about my childhood growing up in a cinder block house, but I told him the whole reason I'm here is because I believe in community and people and everything else.
Right.
Right. So I will tell you that that purpose in your life, when it's about other people and it's rooted that was the design, and you believe in nature, right? Mm-hmm. All right. You could believe that only the strong survive in nature and be good with it, right? So be strong, and you know that you can enable other things. You know things like weeds can destroy, so you would stay away from it. So believe in nature. Don't care, but really believe in what you believe and why.
Right.
You can believe in a grand designer. That can filter off into religion. Believe what you believe. You can believe in evolution. All right. But if you believe in evolution, you might also want to think about the idea of how do we survive as a species? We do that together.
Right.
You'll come up with the same thing. 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 of the Rangers that I see are not concrete in what they believe in, and it breaks my heart.
Right.
And so when we had an opportunity a few years ago to come back off of retirement and to work in the phalanx office, which I think anybody who knows me, that association with Regiment, I feel like I can't live up to it. No. That would be absolute the cornerstone. And I had to tell the individual who asked, I was like, no. I said, I believe I can do more for Rangers as human beings on the outside, because I am not going to be conscripted by the government of what I can and cannot talk about, especially when it comes to faith. Yeah. Right? Because the job that somebody wants in the nuts and bolts of transition, if you don't unpack that with somebody, you take all the Myers-Briggs tests that you want. Right. But all those results are still rooted in somebody's belief system. And I'm not trying to change it. I just want to know so I can enhance.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's having conviction in something and believing in something. But so all the time in uniform, enlisted, officer, I asked this question of everybody, what was your most challenging day in uniform? And I ask it because the answers are so varied. It's either, most of the time it's not when they lost somebody overseas. It's a missed family event. It's a missed wedding or birthday. And it just helps other people know what others have gone through, so they can, call you or call me and rely on somebody else. So what was that most challenging day that just kind of sticks in your mind of those 20 plus years?
Well, it's hard not to bring up combat loss, because you don't want to put that any further down on a roster. So, but I will answer that from a purely selfish. Yeah. So that's kind of been a theme too. That's what people are. Perspective. When I decided to go green or gold, so being a quitter, going to the dark side, I was actually blessed in the process. After a mission on Haditha Dam, my packet was slowed, and it just so happened the SOCOM commander, who's an aviator, was rolling around theater and decided to stop and see what happened. And said, "Do you guys need anything?" I was like, "Yeah, my green and gold packet." Of course, it was approved by the time I got back to Ranger Regiment, right? So I was going to continue to serve. I'm not a horrible person. I went out to a platoon. I believe it was a platoon live fire training event. Like the company was out, but like the company was doing their rotations. I think our guys were in the live fire stage. And so I went out to say goodbye in civilian clothes, which you're not supposed to do. Right. POV. That time a Honda Civic on range roads. I mean, I'm not a very smart man. I'm a passionate man. I'm not a smart man. And I went out there to get, shake hands and say goodbye. And I was told by the senior enlisted leader of that company at the time, he says, "You're never coming back." So I didn't want to come back to show him wrong. That wasn't right.
Right.
It was just, that was a little bit of the culture of the organization.
Right. Yeah.
And it's something I believe I worked hard for a little bit. And I wanted that title of Ranger. I always wanted it to stay with me. Yeah. And that one
sticks with you.
Yeah. Because now the rest of your career, can I get back to Ranger Regiment? Yeah. Am I good enough or whatnot? And God bless officers. I've had a hard time making friends, sustaining relationships with officers, because I was always a little bit older. You have college first, and then you go to graduate school. You have combat in there, and I'm 26 talking to an 18-year-old as an ROTC cadet,
Yeah.
right? So I've always had a hard time. So my relationship with those enlisted leaders always meant the world.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me. Yeah,
Relationships are everything really in life. But on the flip side, you had that. What's the best day that you remember? Something that, one of those days that sticks out.
I mean, I got so many. I mean, I've been blessed. So I'll just give you a one.
Yeah.
And for anybody listening, a little bit of what just please take this as guidance. Just consider it. So when I was promoted to major, in the atrium of the 75th Ranger Regiment headquarters. Mm-hmm. That's just where they do them.
Right.
If you're in headquarters, where it happens. Like, this is a plug and play, right? Like, this is how things are done. So it was really special. I mean, people had to leave their computers. Some people came out. Some people stay. If you know anything, it is the worst place to do an event.
Yes.
Right? Because it was built by what the government said a headquarters can be, and it looks nothing like if we would rebuild it today with the lavishness of open space. So there's people in the back just kind of like, well, I'm listening, so it means I'm here.
They see my face. I'm here.
But my wife was there.
Oh, yeah.
My son was there. My daughter was there, and my daughter was a baby. And our pastor from St. Luke United Methodist Church, Robert Beckham, he came. I invited him, and I shared it with a young Ranger officer, Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Piosa.
Oh, yes.
And his wife Christina, who I love, and their kids, and probably the best I ever did was sharing with my family. So the guidance out of all of this is, for the love of God, military people.
Yeah.
If you are listening, when there is an event, stop thanking the commander first and thank your wife.
Yes. Yeah.
Or your spouse or whoever got you there or whatever you believe in. Please, I'm saying to put them at the end. I'm not trying to rewrite formalities of how we do things. And I do understand. But please put your support network before the military. The military has to do that, and they should be doing that. Right. Just a reminder. And so to be able to do that with my wife was huge.
Yeah, that's great. And I didn't realize the value in having my whole family at events until I was probably E8. And we started doing more things. And
you saw the end. It was getting near too. So like, how many of these do I have?
My wife's like, how many of these have I missed, or how many of these have you not done? And I was like, well, we'll talk about that later. So great segue into family. Being a military man and a family man can be challenging. What's your advice? What has got you through all the years, husband, father, to deployments? Because there's a lot of young, Rangers that are getting married and having kids, and it's difficult. And when my mom was, when I was a kid, my mom would always say, "You just wait till you have kids." And now I'm saying the same thing to my kids. So what would be your advice, or the thing that you guys have leaned on besides faith?
Oh, crap.
Yeah, I took it from
that's hard. I know that's so hard, because that's that built-in accountability because of your friend network and the opportunities of just redundant accountability. Yeah. Man, that's a tough one, because I think how much we rely. Yeah. We rely on it. So that sounds overhanded. Don't create life if you don't want to be about that life you create.
Yeah.
I mean, enjoy the process that does make life. And I understand what that is all about, right? There's ways to stop that from actually creating life, should you want. We can do medical things and in a separate podcast. But you're done. You're done. Like, what are my career goals? Like, I've got some. I've kind of got a vision. But, like, being a good dad is before all of that. Yeah. Right? You're good in the military, especially where we're at, by putting in the hours. You got to put in the hours. You got to put a little bit extra, I think, not to be recognized, to be good and really become a master. Like, you become good by showing up to work. You become a master by the extra time and the dedication. I struggled with, how do I then spend time as a husband first, big struggle, and then as a father, because of the time required.
Yeah. How do you go from me to we? Right.
You got to be better. You got to be better with time. Everybody's dealing with the same thing. But when you force yourself to leave at 6,
Yeah.
you're doing way more than figuring out time for yourself. You're setting a better example for everybody around you.
Right.
I always thought combat was the great equalizer of talent in the military. For instance, you be in garrison, and you could have senior people who work all night, never with their family, and the formation runs smooth, right? And everything's good. They get a lot of self-worth out of that, too. You get a validation of time. Sometimes those people don't develop the best leaders, though, but everything gets done and everything's running smooth. And then you go into combat situation, especially in the conventional side, right? I didn't see too much of Ranger post first few deployments in terms of how the machine truly ran until much later. But in the conventional side, those guys were horrific.
Yeah.
When now everybody's working 24 hours. And guys who work 24 hours, who spent their time in garrison developing leaders because they understood that was garrison and training and we'll need leaders, they were able to remain calm, right? Because they were using the garrison time as planning for combat, where other folks use the garrison time as an opportunity to stand out. It's
stand out, and some of them use it as an escape from their families. Right.
Well, where's their identity?
Right.
Are they identifying more as the next rank, what they want to be, and their goals or objectives, or are they identifying as a husband, father first? Once you identify as a husband and father first, the time decisions like that will constantly eat at you because you could be better for your human being people soldiers too by spending more time with them. But you got to model it. You got to model it for others if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. That's why I had that mantra for years after my son was born, to be the best husband, father, and ranger you can be today, because today is all that matters, right? And if you start worrying too much about where you're going to be tomorrow as a leader, you could quit worrying about the job you currently have, and you lose focus. So, that's a big. Staying present, I had to reprioritize my life, around the family. Had to quit being selfish. And you just got to be intentional. You got to be intentional about it and have cliche communication, and faith helps all along the way as well. So in your post-military life, you were sharing all these lessons learned and helping Rangers and service members transition out of service. Just talk about it a little bit and the journey into that and where it's going, where it has been, where it's at, and where it's headed.
Yeah, well, so it will include the church because you all see that's part of the life. So it's kind of interesting. I left Fort Bragg after a couple company commands, come up to a Ranger Regiment, be an assistant air officer. That's where you throw some people to get reblued before you either go out to company commands or continue to stay on staff for that period of your time in Ranger Regiment. My son, we were worried about him. He was born when we were in the career course. He was roughly 2.5, 3 when we moved. At Fort Bragg, I was gone all the time. A couple of JRTC rotations, absolutely the finest military installation in the United States Army. And then I think an 8-month deployment, we were considered the last true conventional brigade to leave Iraq. He wouldn't talk to me. He didn't know me. His mother is a wonderful Southern girl. So he's been raised like a Southern boy, loves his mom a whole lot, very emotional with his mom. And for me, it was very difficult. Kind of broke my heart a little bit. So we looked for a facility where we want to get him a little bit more touches and routine, and we decided on St. Luke's School. That led to a relationship with St. Luke, becoming members there. By 2017, I'm now med boarded, thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Been working with nonprofits because that's what you do as the PAO, at least then in Ranger Regiment. You're kind of like the initial intake, figure out either what they would like to do, what they might request, and then ensure it's legal, ethical, moral, know the rules, and kind of then send it up for guidance. So the nonprofit thing started interesting me post-career, or just the service. How do I continue to serve? But it was the church. The church cemented a lot of things for my wife. My wife and I would have been divorced about 8 times by now if it wasn't for that relationship. So Pastor Beckham, Robert Beckham, who's recently retired, at St. Luke. We sat down, and I made a decision that we were going to come back to Columbus, Georgia, because I love this church. I love Rangers. Columbus, Georgia was about coming back for the church.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to run the military ministry. I said, I don't know what I'll do for work. I'll figure that out. That was in 2017. And we call that the Ruth Ann's Covenant that we had amongst each other. And when I went down to Tampa the first couple months when you were at SOCOM, and you see all the things in Tampa and the beaches and going to sporting events, I was like, I don't know if that covenant's going to hold up, right? Like, and I am a human, I'm fallible, so maybe that won't hold up. But it was apparent. Like we just love this area. So that got us here, and then got me thinking, how can I continue to serve? How can I continue to serve? And Carl Monger, who came up with the first real organization called Gallant Few in 2010. For Rangers who are struggling in their transition, not what we consider transition now,
right.
18 months out if you're separating, 2 years out if you're retiring into your first job. We're talking more about, he just had a network of Rangers. They would kind of gravitate. Once you help one, there's a gravitation. And so he was working with, substance abuse, alcohol, difficulty with jobs, finances, marriages. And so he founded Gallant Few. And as a PAO, I just kind of gravitated to that, but really realized that my skill set, I'm more of a Chick-fil-A wind shape type person, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it goes back, that's how I relate better. So I really wanted to deep dive into this transition thing.
Yeah.
So as a PAO, I was able to a little bit. We did some articles called Ranger for Life. We're like, where are some young, we can't tell the story of the platoon sergeant who's been, Silver Star, 12 years. Like we don't do that stuff, but we can highlight that stuff all day, but because of OPSEC, we don't do it. We can tell the stories of people who've been successful. And if we're going to tell the stories, why don't we make it people who fit a cultural ideal that we want, a Ranger for Life. So somebody who gives back. And so that all morphed into helping with transition. So now I run the Ranger Outreach Center at St. Luke, a building 3,000 square feet for free. And I will tell you, if you're looking at nonprofit work, if you're looking at partnerships in the community, there are churches that want to help.
Right.
Or religious organizations make it broader.
Yeah.
Not just because they want people in and all that type of stuff, but like community outreach, like what a church is there for, right? So there's just opportunities. So I run that center, and it is fantastic when Rangers and their families come. They come for transition support. And out of that center, we also partner with Crew Military, and they actually have access to be champions of the chaplains and have volunteers who want to help share the word with active duty. We have Ranger Association, so it's a partnership, right? It's not a Gallant Few thing. It's not a church thing. Right. It's a point of light thing.
Right.
Because that's the example. The biggest win, the vision, is when someone figures out how we did it and say, how can I replicate it? That's the win.
Right.
It's not doing well. We'll do well.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we'll do well. Like, we know our backgrounds. We're going to do well. The level of how well, who knows?
Right.
But winning is people replicating it. So now I work with Three Rangers Foundation, Gallant Few. I wouldn't say we work with Ranger Regiment, because Ranger Regiment is a government entity, but we figure out what their priorities are and then try to mirror it to help with the transition and support for supporting the seminar down at 175. And it's so great culturally. You'll be happy to know, because you came on about 19, was it 18, 19?
To Phalanx?
Phalanx, to the Phalanx.
Yeah, 18.
18, right? And so the whole thing, we have to do these RFL seminars, policies, and then COVID.
Right.
Every battalion has them scheduled out. The 175 was actually a primer for their bigger one.
Oh,
they
really?
wanted to make sure that they have it right. They have invested a captain and a sergeant first class to be able to do that. And wherever you put time, talent, and people, that's where your priorities are at. Absolutely. So that's pretty awesome. So The Rock, helping Rangers in transition, and then what comes out of that is the ability through Ranger for Life LLC. There's one thing to provide people resources and information. It's another thing to be very aggressive in placing them where they would like to be.
Right.
And that's the business opportunity on the backside. But that business opportunity, just so everybody knows, is a way to support the nonprofits.
Yeah.
And I did want to take this opportunity to talk to that about people.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's like, why is that an LLC and we have these nonprofits? I will tell you why. And if you want to help, I will tell you exactly why. As a nonprofit, a lot of your time is not. I mean, this goes back to like you spend 90% of your time on the soldiers who need extra help and
Yes.
only 10 on the ones that you thought you were going to develop. The amount of events that you need to do and the development for running a nonprofit is tiresome. And when I looked at my calendar and I'm like, I have 3 appointments with Rangers this week, but my calendar is taken up with what it's nonprofit, but what really equates to business development.
Yeah.
I am like, how can I do this better? Right? I don't want to have to hire more staff to do development. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at the transition space, yes, some people have community outreach dollars and they want to support what you do and are happy getting your newsletters, right? Companies have, and I'm giving away the secret sauce, so I really don't care, because if somebody can do it better and it helps Rangers or any other veteran, more better. But companies have marketing and recruitment dollars, and you are trying to help get people jobs.
Yeah.
So why would you turn off the ability to help if it's towards your entire mission? I will not let a tax process, perception at a certain level, or my what a business is called, to stop me from that mission. So we created that as a way to get after all of it, so we can inject what Rangers have into the rest of America.
Yeah.
So that's the background on that.
That's great. I always tell, Ranger, that's, you gotta, it's like that menu of options. Again, you are capable of anything you want to do in this world. You just need to make sure you have the conversations with the right people to find out if that's truly something you want to do, or if your heart maybe still is in that platoon cage or that company CP. So that brings us to a more elite transition. There's a 8-week course that's, I think you're kicking off soon. The first one is that
Tuesday. Tuesday. Super excited for it.
Yeah, and everybody knows I went to the Honor Foundation. I used the Commit Foundation, Special Operations Transition Foundation. Kind of in that same vein, I assume. Could you just tell? I know it's new. Tell people about it. And
well, thanks for that opportunity. Right, and this isn't the marketing spiel, but it is 8 years of lessons learned.
Right.
Seeing what people do well, and you mentioned the Honor Foundation. So Matt Stevens. I called him. I was like, "Hey, do you know the RFL seminar schedule?" And he didn't. Mm-hmm. Well, now he's got them. He'll be at every single event.
Oh, that's good.
Right? And I'll talk about why, like organizations who are vetted, the role that I think that it kind of plays. Our program is different, right? So you better look at your nonprofit, for-profit, whatever, with some type of value statement. Networking, for networking's sake, is enjoyable and it's easy, which will tell you it might not lead to anything. Right. So networking is great. I look at everything in terms of business. Business keeps me honest. Business keeps me accountable. So if a networking meeting now becomes business development, I am now looking at from, I'm not having a cup of coffee to have a cup of coffee. What do I have to provide Yuma, and what is my ask from Yuma? Mm-hmm. How are we going to be mutually beneficial? Now, some people might go into a meeting with only their asker, which is fine. But I think once you care about relationships, you understand. And I look at the world as there's enough money in the world. And the U.S. Treasury is a great example. They just print it whenever they want. So who gives a
no
crap
gold
anyway?
Standard anymore.
The gold standard is not the gold standard.
Right.
It's the Xerox standard.
Yeah.
Right. So if we look at the world in terms of there's enough money to be made, there's enough out there, then I know I can make more together with more people, because I can't. Remember, a monopoly, that's actually illegal.
Right.
So you can't even do it if you look at it from a finite constraint.
Yeah.
At least in my state. So let's go back, actually answer the question, stop doing a tangent. Our value proposition is not the networking or the job or the continuing education advice. That's all easy. You can get it online, get it from a lot of different people. A lot of different people do that well, right? We actually bring and encourage Rangers still do the Honor Foundation, because that is business development. Because why would you limit yourself to just Rangers, right?
Right.
So the other three parts of what the regiment has asked for people to look at in terms of priorities, That's what we're attacking. So the first is the integration into the VA system. Right. Disability claim, great. If that's where you stop at the federal level and don't look at all the benefits associated, you're off. Anybody who's listening, if you haven't completed your VA claim, that's another thing. Get contact at the end of this and we'll hook you up. If you haven't taken your federal VA disability rating and gone to the local vet center or VA support assistant and asked, so what does that mean for my federal and state benefits, and getting a rundown, you're failing.
Right.
And I'm talking to Rangers now, and you will respond to that. You are failing. You're not knowing is a lack of your initiative and not building your tribe to grow. Right. So VA first. And also part of that's ensuring they're enrolled in VA healthcare and that they know in case that there's emergency. The second is financial literacy. The poor get poorer, rich get richer, and that's because of education and family. Only 3% of all Americans utilize a financial planner. More than 55% of all Americans are in debt, and less than 20% have enough money for any type of retirement that will lead to fulfillment.
Right.
So you can live on Social Security and potentially what you did for your own retirement, potentially a 401k, but if you're not thriving, that's a horrible way to spend the end of your life. Now, I believe that man was made to work their entire life, and that is my plan. So my idea of actually retirement on a boat or something, I don't have that.
Right.
But to not plan to be able to do it, well, that's kind of different. So another reason when the failings job was kind of opened and I said no is because I will tell you right now, I'll tell everybody they need a financial planner. Financial planners don't need a financial planner. I did a survey with my fraternity. So they said college boy before coming in.
Yep.
And so I try to utilize groups with veterans and people we work with, go back to the civilian world. So at about the 45 people that I have somewhat of a contact with, 43 have a financial planner. Why are college age kids, and I'm now 45, and this was from a few years ago,
right.
40s, so 40s would be, I don't know, maybe about master sergeant or retiring, lieutenant colonel, all but 2 or 3, right? 3 of them are financial planners. One is my financial planner. So in the last 18 months, 263 Rangers seen, 8 have financial planners. Way more than 8 are retiring too, by the way.
Right.
If you go to the Global Soft Foundation's Soft for Life transition survey poll, which was mostly from E6, so staff sergeants to sergeant first class E7s, and then lieutenant colonels and colonels, financial stress and not being prepared is their number one worry.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, how do we get after that? Well, I love the idea. Failings, brought on the financial, a formal financial advisor who provides financial education, right? Sergeant Major Mike Hall, Jeff Wright and Marcus Hall just spoke at the seminar. But I will say you need a financial planner. If you don't know why, talk to me, and I will tell you why. Right? And I don't care who you use. Yeah. I do. I want them to be reputable. But that's what money is stability. Money is the opportunity to help more people too. Gosh, I could go on forever. So that was the second. So VA claim, finances. And the last part, holistic, we call it holistic strength training. And I will tell you right now, when I meet one-on-one with a Ranger, it is last for a reason. It's really first. Mind, body, spirit, it's really first. Why does it last for a reason? Because I need to gain their trust. Here, once again, here's a secret sauce. I gain their trust by being a subject matter expert of the actual transition process, and then introducing them to people they didn't know, so they will listen to this last part. Executive coaching.
Yes.
Well, I have my own theory on what executive coaching really is. If you looked at it from a business model, you would want your executive coaching to be in-house to minimize costs, and you would want your executive coaching to make your people better, to be about the bottom line. You would think. So, but what executive coaching has become is an industry, which I believe in, by the way, where you take an outsider, you bring them in, and they're talking to people about how to manage people and relationships. Executive coaching is counseling. It's counseling.
Right.
It is not, business might be involved, But if it was just training, you would have a workshop, you would bring everybody in, you say, this is how we better sell this widget.
Right.
All right. So as Rangers, physical fitness always a big deal. We generally listen to people to get our routines. We know what works best for us over time, but we listen to other people. We are very receptive, right? And we generally train those muscles at least 5 days a week in some type of rotation. So what is the most dense muscle in your body? It's your brain.
Right. Yeah.
Why would you leave that to leaving it to yourself is the most ignorant, in the Merriam-Webster, ignorant, way of approaching self-growth. If you limit your brain's ability to grow and look at new things, that's going to affect, how you even take information about how you should take care of your body for physical performance that you listen to other people about. Yeah. So, Tony Mayne, I have no problem saying this, marriage counseling constantly, because I'm supposed to treat my wife as Christ, love the church, which I fail at big time, right? But I realize that's something I aspire to do.
Yeah.
I have it. You figure out Nicole Mayne, and I'll give you a shiny nickel, man. Like, I can't figure that lady out, and I love her to death, right? And I need help doing it. Right. So I seek help. Through the VA, because of some memory loss issues, the lady that I see there, I don't know if I really need to see her, Miss Sharon Hare. You are loved, by the way. But every week we start off and she allows me to talk to her.
Yeah.
And I said, this is healing for me. I trust you. I don't want to try to find somebody else. This is not your job. Right. So VA, keep on paying her. Don't hold this against her.
Yeah.
Wonderful person. Right. So I got to practice what I preach.
Yep.
And if you're looking at somebody who's like, seems put together, confident or whatnot, this wasn't.
Right.
This is in the last couple of years. I finally started investing in myself. We just want younger Rangers to start doing this earlier, which was the answer to your question of how are we different in the value. That's all those lessons learned, right? So you got to gain trust, be an expert, and you got to talk about money. Money stability, money's opportunity. Money is not the end all. It provides and allows for your purpose to possibly expand because you're able to spend the time and the want. The VA, that's your health. Health's important, right? That allowed VA healthcare for that first 5 years. If you get out as a team leader, specialist, that allows you to change jobs and move because at least that health portion is taken care of. That buys you flexibility,
right? And
then taking care of yourself will make you realize over time that it's probably the influence you have with other people.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There you go. Those are the three things make us a little bit different. And we touch on it with some great master trainers. So real quick, we have a former Johnson & Johnson executive who stood up the first 100 Johnson & Johnson wellness clinics in the United States and overseas. We have J.C. Glick, who's a very good friend with personality assessments, who leading with vulnerability, I think, is kind of his watchword, watchphrase as well. We have Bill Kiefer, who's also with the Honor Foundation. Yeah. And in fact, his textbook, like his book was one of our textbooks. It's like mandatory reading. And then Nancy Gillette and Adam Stallnacher, who's our kind of finance guy. So everybody will go through a 5-course financial planning workshop. Yeah. You won't graduate. You will not pass go unless you do it.
That's great.
Anyhow, that's the team, man.
That's great. And I'll say quick about the transition process because I'm in it now.
Waiting to retire.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Retirement ceremony next week.
Next Thursday.
There it is. Yeah. There, come one and all. It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. That's a whole nother topic. But when you're retiring or you're transitioning, you can feel like you're on an island, right? So the platoon keeps going, the company keeps going. And you're just kind of on an island. So these transition courses, whether you go to Tony's, the more elite, you go to the Honor Foundation, you get more involved in TAP than you have to because there's opportunity. We just usually don't do it because that's what we do. You have to do this so you can find community again. Because that's what people ask me all the time. Why do you do this podcast? So I can have conversations like this and have a community, because that's what I've been around for 20 years. And suddenly going on an island is uncomfortable and increases anxiety and depression and all of that stuff. So, and these executive coaches, The other most powerful word, I think, was perspective.
Sure.
They were able to tell me that my military service, where it had value, and that story actually, when I was in the JOC and helped make a decision, that's a great story to tell in an interview. So you use these programs. I cannot emphasize enough. Even if they don't lead to employment, they're going to lead to better overall personal health, which it all starts with self. It all starts in your head. For 20 years, I avoided the weight train, who the regiment hires, physical fitness instructors, and I was too good to go see them, right? Where I'm a stubborn Ranger, and it's all the same way with our minds. We have the facilities there. The stigma, I think, is starting to go away, but these transition programs are holistic. They get at everything, and they help hold you accountable, because that's what's another thing that's the military has done for you for all your time, is held you accountable. They make you show up and make you do things, make you go through stuff, and just make sure you're using them. I'll put your contact information at the end of this.
Appreciate
if
it.
you're fine with that, and go to them. And then I always tell Ranger service member, you don't have to go to one. Go to another one.
Why would you only use one if you have the time and plan?
If you can have the time and the planning and commit to it, use a couple of them out there, and again, just change your perspective. Get up from that when you're on that weapons squad berm and move over 4 feet, and then you have a whole new field of fire that you never knew existed. And these transition programs are the exact same thing. It just applies to your life. And we'll end this here with the little sticks that I'm doing now, right? With
here we go.
The random question. 2 each. No idea what's coming up. Well, obviously, we burn the first card like any good card player would, right? And I'll put it in the middle there for you.
Always away from the dealer as well, of course.
You can ask me the first one, if you can reach.
This is a great one. All right, so what is the best thing to happen to you this year, other than this episode?
Right.
We don't want to be too grandiose with it.
That's great. So the best thing that happened to me this year, and it's been a really good year, busy year, the retirement year. There's a lot of scary and a lot of good, but was actually 2 weeks ago when I brought my 13-year-old son on the podcast, and I interviewed him, and I gave him questions, and he thought about stuff. But there's always questions about, should I retire now? And, I have friends calling me and texting me. He's like, you would be a great sergeant major.
Oh, sure.
Please do this. But when my son sat there and just said, I'm so tired of moving and not seeing you, it helped me stay solidified, and I made the right decision, right? Because it's questioning yourself is, you don't want to do that in any form, combat related, family related. You don't want to have doubts. And now I have no doubts, right? And it was great to have a conversation like that with something you don't normally have with your 13-year-old, an interview style conversation, and asking him questions about what it was like being a military kid for the last 13 years, and the last 6 that he really remembers. So that was the best thing for me so far this year.
That's awesome. That's great.
Okay. If you were the captain of a ship, what would you call it? And you're not retiring on a boat somewhere, so you could just...
And this is free game.
This is free chicken.
Wow. Passion sounds good, right? That just sounds great.
Yeah.
It's not for like a hedonism trip or anything, right. But passion sounds pretty good.
I think
passion sounds good.
Because you're a passionate person.
Oh, a little bit.
So as soon as I read it, I was like, he's either going to do the smart thing and name it after his wife.
I thought about that too.
Or faith.
I thought about it, but my wife's real first name is Vonda, and she doesn't use it. Little known. That's just for the audience. When you see Nicole Mayne, please call her Vonda.
All right, one more.
All right, brother. Here we go. Oh, this is horrible.
Okay.
This is absolutely horrible. Which actor or actress, hopefully actor, would you want to play you in a movie of your life?
Okay, this is an easy one for me.
Oh.
Because I'm using actors and actresses that are no longer with us, and it's John Wayne.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
Yeah,
that's well played.
Green Berets. Mm-hmm. I had an old recording of it, VHS recording from TBS,
Nice.
Green Berets and Kelly's Heroes. And I watched those movies from 10 until I left the house to come to Fort Benning. And a big John Wayne fan, the Cowboys and the Searchers and all of that stuff. So I would take John if you can pick anybody, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, can't go wrong.
All right. What gives you butterflies in your stomach?
I love, first it's my kids and their eyes when they're learning something new. I think that's a reflection of God when you see that. But I would say that's really anybody. That's what I'm always looking for.
Yeah.
What do they say? The way to the soul is through someone's eyes. You can see the soul through their eyes.
I believe that's right. Yes.
And I will tell you, that's when you think you know the purpose of your life and you share it and you see that reflected. That's it, man.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for coming on here and doing this. I really appreciate it. For all of you out there watching, make sure you do all the stuff, like, share, subscribe, reach out to Tony. If you're in the transition process or have questions about it, he's happy. He's a help. He's a busy man. It might take a minute. It might take a day for the email or two, but that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing because hopefully Rangers and service members are transitioning into more purposeful lives. And that's kind of what I said when I moved into the Phalanx office. Is I said I'm tired of my friends killing themselves, and if we can, take that number down or to zero through education and me having to be open and vulnerable, let's do it because the power of one is a real thing. So thanks again, Tony. I appreciate it, and we'll check in with you guys next week. Bye.